My name is Zhao Kuangyin. Many people say I'm a lucky man, claiming that I became the founding emperor just by changing into a yellow robe, or that I took back the military power from my subordinates just by drinking with them. They're not wrong, and I'll share more about that with you someday. But first, I must tell you about my life, and one thing you should know is that life is very difficult. To talk about myself, I must mention my father, Zhao Kuangyin. He had quite a tough life. Before he could inherit the family's official position, the Song Dynasty had already fallen. The status and treatment of the Zhao family vanished with the dynasty's collapse. Then the era began to change so rapidly that even I had trouble understanding it. Zhu Wen established the Houliang, and then Li Cunxu established the Houtang. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, so my father immediately joined Houtang. At that time, he was still a young man, risking his life on the battlefield, and quickly became Li Cunxu's right-hand man. In 926 AD, the Chenqiao Mutiny incident broke out, and Li Cunxu was shot to death by arrows and then cremated. At that time, Zhao Kuangyin thought he needed to find a new job immediately and serve someone else, because his wife was already pregnant, and he would soon have a child to raise, which required money. It was the following year, in 927 AD, that I was born. My father, Zhao Kuangyin, was a typical tiger father. He often took me to participate in various physical activities, so my life was always filled with intense training or studying. Every day, I would wake up at the crack of dawn to exercise, and when the dogs went to sleep, I would stay up late reading by the light of the lamp. All these efforts and hardships in my upbringing became the foundation of my future success. But at that time, I didn't understand this. As a young boy, I often complained, asking why my life was so hard and why I had to endure so much fatigue every day. I wondered why my father was so strict. However, if I had the chance now, I would definitely say that the environment's influence is the greatest education for a person. Alright, I've digressed again. In 936 AD, Shi Jingtang of the later Tang dynasty rebelled and gave the 16 prefectures of Yan Yun to the Khitan people, seeking foreign aid from Liao to establish the later Jin. This caused another significant upheaval in the realm. My father remained calm. He packed up and moved from Luoyang to Kaifeng and continued to work for the later Jin. When Shi Jingtang's son ascended the throne, he felt ashamed of his father's actions and refused to be a vassal of the Khitan. Consequently, the later Jin was defeated and bankrupted by Liao. As times continued to change, Liu Zhiyuan seized the opportunity to establish the later Han. My father, still unperturbed, transformed once again and became a commander of the Imperial Guards under the later Han. I was 20 years old that year. I often practiced boxing at that time, which I particularly enjoyed. The style of boxing I practiced was later named Taizu Changquan by future generations. Many people envy me, saying my father was successful and my family was stable. But there are also those who scold us, calling my entire family opportunists, saying my father was a slick official and I was just a good-for-nothing young master. So, during that time I was filled with resentment. What could I do? After much thought, I decided to run away from home. I wanted to prove my own abilities, to show that without relying on my father, I could still make a name for myself. I didn't take a penny with me and set off on a journey with no money, traveling as a pauper. During that time, I survived by doing odd jobs and earning small tips. I traveled while working and admiring the beautiful landscapes of our country, slowly making my way to Xiangyang. With an empty stomach, I arrived at the gate of a temple, begging for food. The monks were bewildered, thinking, "Hey, we usually go out to ask for alms. How come someone is asking for alms from us?" But the abbot, seeing my robust physique and extraordinary demeanor, said, "All right, we'll give you some food, and I'll also tell your fortune." The old monk told me, "Head north quickly, your benefactor is in the north." I replied, "I have no money. How can I go north when I have nothing left?" The abbot generously gave me a bag of money, saying it was to support me. Surprised, I asked, "Why are you being so kind to me?" He just smiled and said it was fate. Fine, if it's fate, then it's fate. I traveled north, and when my money was nearly gone, I arrived under the service of Guo Wei. Who was he? He was a founding hero of the Hou Han, recruiting troops to fight Li Shouzhen. So, I joined the Hou Han. Unlike my father in the capital, I started as a low-ranking soldier. How tall a tree grows depends on its ability, so I began slowly building my own power. At that time, I was skilled in both literature and martial arts, physically strong, able to compose poems, write articles, and fight battles. As a standout person, it was hard for the leaders not to notice me. Throughout history, what's the most valuable thing, Talent. From then on, for the next few years, Guo led me in battles across the land, even fighting the Khitan people abroad. During that time, I gradually forgot I was still a noble young master and left behind the comfortable life at home. I particularly enjoyed fighting enemies on dangerous battlefields, feeling that achieving glory through my own efforts was excellent. But my elder brother Guo was different. He created a precedent for himself. The reason? It's simple. The second-generation emperor was worried about containing this founding hero. Guo's achievements overshadowed the emperor, so how to suppress him? The young emperor came up with an idea to kill Guo's entire family. And so he did, executing Guo's entire family. When Guo heard this news, his rage was indescribable. He marched back to Bianjin and replaced the emperor. Then he claimed that the Khitan army was advancing south, and he needed to lead his troops to confront them. After sleeping outside, his trusted aides wrapped him in a dragon robe and carried him back to the capital, thus establishing the Hozhou. With Guo as emperor, I was appointed as vice commander. In the capital, I reunited with my father, who had also switched allegiance to Hozhou and was now the chief commander of the First Army. Our positions were quite similar. I looked at my father and said, "Oh, you've joined Hozhou too?" He replied, "Yes, and so have you." In 954 AD, Guo passed away, and his adopted son Chairong ascended the throne. He immediately appointed me as the head of the Imperial Guards. That same year, Beihan. What is Beihan? It's the remnant of the Hou Han joined forces with the Khitan to attack Hozhou. Chairong personally led the army. He was confident in his soldiers, but when the enemy's charge sounded, the Khitan troops surged forward with such momentum that the young emperor and his soldiers, who had never faced such an assault, were overwhelmed. Several of Hozhou commanders fled, causing chaos among the troops. At that moment, I led 2,000 elite soldiers and charged at the enemy, creating a bloody path and stabilizing the situation. After recovering, Chairong felt humiliated. Knowing the emperor's anger, I pursued the retreating enemies to Hedongcheng, relentlessly attacking until an arrow struck my knee. Only then did Chairong persuade me to stop, saying, "Brother, let it go. You've done so much for me and I've seen it all. We've already won. There's no need for further slaughter." I nodded in agreement. In 956 AD, Chairong confronted Huang Fuhui of Nantang, challenging him to a battle formation. I thought, fine, and after 3 days and nights, Huang Fuhui set up a grand formation with mystical names. The only exit left him outside the town. As soon as the battle began, I charged at him on horseback and beheaded him, scattering his forces. A year later, when Nantang attacked Yangzhou, Chairong and I quickly subdued the area. Another year passed, and in 958 AD, I joined Chairong in a northern campaign, defeating thousands of Khitan soldiers and stabilizing Guannan. During this period, my bond with Chairong deepened. We became like brothers, our relationship exceptional. However, an awkward situation arose in that same year. Chairong, at 38, fell ill and died, leaving the 7-year-old Cai Zongxun as the new emperor. This left me in a difficult position. My brother was gone, and I wondered what to do about his widow and young son. Empress Dowager Fu wept bitterly in the palace while the young emperor played, unfit to rule. I remembered how Guo's entire family was slaughtered 7 years earlier due to their significant status as the emperor's close companions. What should I do? Is there really any room for sentiment in the face of imperial power? Could our brotherly bond withstand the pressures of authority? Chairong's words made me ponder deeply. In 960 AD, the Khitan and Beihan planned to attack Hozhou together. The Chancellor Fanzhi was in a state of panic and rushed to the Empress Dowager saying, "What should we do? They are coming to attack us." Thus, I left the city. The army saw me off, saying, "You must defeat them." "Zhao Kuangyin, we are sorry to trouble you with this task again." I remained silent, but my expression was heavy. As our troops reached Chenqiao about 20 kilometers from Kaifeng, I ordered them to set up camp and have dinner. That night, the soldiers started whispering among themselves. "This little emperor knows nothing. He gathers us for another battle, just to send us to our deaths while the nobility enjoys themselves in the capital without a care for us." Another soldier replied, "Yes, look at how much better General Zhao Kuangyin is compared to that emperor. General Zhao is righteous and skilled in martial arts, much better than that Empress Dowager and the little emperor. We should support General Zhao as emperor. Under his rule, our treatment will surely be much better. You're Zhao Kuangyin brother, right? What do you think? Zhao Kuangyin thought about it and agreed. After consulting with others, he secretly draped a yellow robe over my pretending to sleep body. I opened my eyes slightly and realized what was happening. Pretending to have just woken up, I looked down at the yellow robe and exclaimed, "What's this? I can't wear this." The soldiers knelt down en masse. Understanding the situation, I immediately put on a reluctant expression. "You covet power and force me to be emperor. This isn't right," I said. Some soldiers replied, "If General Zhao doesn't become emperor, we will commit suicide right here." Reluctantly, I agreed, "All right, I'll be emperor, but after we return to the capital, no harm must come to the Empress Dowager and the young emperor. No looting of the treasury or harming the people is allowed. Obeying commands will be rewarded. Disobedience will be punished." The soldiers agreed, so I led the troops back to Kaifeng. The defenders of the capital, Shishou Xing, Wang Shenqi, and others, opened the gates to welcome me upon learning of the successful coup. Only Han Tong attempted resistance, but before he could muster his troops, he was killed by others. My soldiers took control of the capital without bloodshed. The officials in Kaifeng, unused to such force, had no choice but to comply. Hanlin Xueshi Taogu presented a pre-prepared edict of abdication from Cai Zongxun. On the 4th day of the first lunar month, I formally ascended the throne at Chongyuandian in Kaifeng at the age of 34, establishing the Song Dynasty. After the Chenqiao Mutiny and my ascension, I suffered from insomnia. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep through the night. When I couldn't sleep, I would summon ministers for conversation. This insomnia persisted, worsening over more than a year. A guard once gifted me a hidden sword and my cane, hoping it would help me sleep better. I rewarded him generously, but it didn't help. I still couldn't sleep. In the second year of the Chenqiao Mutiny, Jianlong 2 Nian, in July 961, I invited Shishou Xing and other key generals who supported my rise to drink with me. As we drank, I confided in my old comrades about my severe insomnia. "Brothers, I owe everything to you. Without you, I wouldn't be emperor. I toast to you. Do you know? I always remember your contributions. Being emperor isn't easy. I've never had a single night of restful sleep." Back then, among the Yishe Shishongdi I had sworn brotherhood with, one of the generals, Shishou Xing, was bewildered and asked, "Your Majesty, why?" I replied, "Isn't it obvious? You all know my position as emperor. Who wouldn't want it? Do you want it? Everyone does, and that's why I can't sleep." Upon hearing this, everyone at the banquet immediately knelt down. They pledged their loyalty, saying, "Heaven's mandate is clear. Anyone who dares to have dissenting thoughts will be killed by us." I rubbed my forehead and continued, "Get up. You are all my good friends, my brothers. I know you are loyal, but what if one day someone drapes the yellow robe over you? What will you do then?" It took over a year for these straightforward military men to understand that my insomnia was due to this fear. Even the dullest among them realized they might be in danger. They quickly knelt down and said, "Brother Emperor, show us the right path. What should we do now?" Taking advantage of my inebriated state, I slurred, "Why don't you relinquish your military powers? With no suspicion between ruler and ministers, both can live in peace. Wouldn't that be good?" The next day, my old friends submitted their resignations. Once their military powers were relinquished, I finally managed to get a good night's sleep. In 963 AD, I deployed troops to pacify the regions of Jingnan and Wuping in Hubei. In 965 AD, I attacked and annexed Hoshu, bringing Sichuan under control. By the 4th year of the Kaibao era, which was 971 AD, I conquered Nanhan, subsequently pacifying Guangxi and Guangdong. In the 8th year of the Kaibao era, which was 975 AD, I conquered the most powerful of the 10 kingdoms, Nantang, pacifying Jiangsu. Throughout these years, a constant presence behind me was my brother Zhao Kuangyin. After becoming emperor, I entrusted the command of the Imperial Guards to him so he could help monitor the generals. After the campaign in Taiyuan, I granted him the title of King of Jin, placing him above the Chancellor. By that time, he was already the second most powerful person in the empire, right after me. At that time, my general, Dang Jin, often patrolled Kaifeng under my orders. There was a trend among the nobles to walk their pets in the streets. Whenever Dang Jin saw such behavior, He would forcibly take the animals and set them free, scolding the pet owners saying, "You buy meat but don't feed your parents. Instead you raise these birds and beasts. What kind of behavior is this?" One day, he saw a petty official walking a young hawk in the street. He intended to reprimand the official and release the hawk, but the official swaggered and said, "Listen carefully, this hawk belongs to Prince Jin." Upon hearing this, Danzi's expression immediately changed. He gently said to the official, "Oh yes, you must take good care of Prince Jin's hawk." He even took out money himself to buy meat to feed the hawk. In reality, I should have realized then that this tale was hard to shake off, but although I was cautious, I did not think much of it. In the 9th year of the Kaibal era, on the night of October 19, 976 AD, I suddenly had a whim. Feeling a bit bored, I summoned my brother into the palace and we drank together. We reminisced about our childhood in our hometown and the dangers and luck we faced on the battlefield. We also dreamed together about the glorious future of the Song Empire. Brothers united indeed are as strong as gold. We drank like this until very late. The next morning, I mysteriously died in the Van Suidian at the age of 50. Shortly after, Zhao Kuangyin ascended the throne as Emperor Taizu of Song. But that is another story. My life ended then. His name was Zhao Kuangyin. After the Chenqiao Mutiny, he returned to Kaifeng. When he saw Tairong's son, Cai Zongxun, he firmly opposed the minister's suggestion to kill him to eliminate future troubles. He believed that having usurped the throne was already an act of unkindness. How could he further harm others' children? So he left the child to be raised by the ministers. Not only that, but he also ordered the protection of the Chai family descendants, decreeing that they should not be punished for any crimes. During the Relinquish One's Military Command Over a Glass of Wine event, the generals relinquished their military power, and Zhao Kuangyin rewarded each of them with a large pension. He did not resort to violence or trickery. Instead, like an honest businessman, he systematically bought out the military power. He did this so often that later, Fan Zhongyan remarked, "Since the ancestors we have not lightly killed. They deeply valued this virtuous act." He was forced into the emperor's robe, treated the previous dynasty and its descendants kindly, and reclaimed military power by spending heavily. In the eyes of many, Zhao Kuangyin appeared to be an honest and somewhat simple man. But was that really the case? From the historical records, we can see that he was both literate and martial, valued loyalty and righteousness, did not mistreat officials, did not kill meritorious ministers, and was not ungrateful to his brothers. He pacified the southern separatists and once marched north to conquer Beihai. He understood the suffering of the people, which is why he said, "Your bodies and salaries are all derived from the people's fat and blood." He also realized that Bianliang was not a long-term residence and planned to move the capital to Luoyang. During his 16-year reign, Zhao Kuangyin corrected the moral decline and social disorder that had plagued the 5 dynasties, curbed the lawlessness and ambitions of military generals, eradicated the sources of chaos, and re-established the order of rights and ethics. Emperor Taizu of Song nearly reshaped the order of Chinese civilization. Perhaps just for this alone, his contributions will be remembered for eternity. How should we evaluate such a person? Perhaps not much needs to be said. The phrase 唐宗宋祖 suffices.